So basically, we finished with the last open talk, we finished the talks about Olga's system of immortality, which she is presenting from 3 points of view. Olga's system of immortality is based on our nature, on natural mechanisms of our physical body, of an energetical body, and the mental body. If we speak about the yogic way, so way of breathing, so to say, this is one possibility of obtaining the realization. I'm speaking now about the highest potential realization of the consciousness, the body of light. Another way would be Tantra. And these two ways Olga is offering. The transformation through Tantra and the transformation through breathing. There's another way, it is an alchemical way, which Olga doesn't know, at least not completely, and so we don't have this opportunity here. That's what we have been talking and discussing in the last open talks. Breathing and sexual tantra, these two ways. This is a lot of information, and we can go deeper in many points of these talks. And what we are going to speak today about is one of those details. This is something that people encounter on the third step of pranic breathing, and this is the main reason why Olga is warning people of doing these practices reckless or without proper support, without proper knowledge, because we have many ideas and we don't know what will happen. What we are going to speak today about is our entities, entities which are controlling us. I ask kindly everyone to understand very clear what I'm going to say now. What I will read today, those are not words from me. I have Olga found them on YouTube, on internet. It's from a Russian author. Olga gives this information on the third step. And I welcome everyone to research deeper in this direction. What I will present is nothing that is some way acknowledged by official science or something like this. Please perceive this as just information that you can research deeper. Or you may find experience that resonates with this information, and this way you will have a point and access already in your history, in your life, to this information, and maybe this will open some new understandings. So, the lymphatic system. This is, so to say, the topic of today, but basically that's not the topic. Basically we are speaking about entities which are controlling us. And this goes so deep. If I start to explain any more, first of all, we will not finish, because we will begin to touch all the other topics like Breatharianism, Pranic Breathing, enlightenment, immortality, sexual tantra. And secondly, without your experience of these topics that I can open or what I can tell, it will be useless information. Probably it will be not helpful. Olga has a unique way of explaining, because she is not using any affirmations, any visualizations in her methods. She is using the natural mechanisms, and she is explaining it step by step, logically, mechanically, systematically. So you have two opportunities. Either you follow this step-by-step method and you gain results, and depending on results you can say what you have done wrong, what you have done correctly. Or you stick to an idea, and by doing so you can kind of hide in this illusion that this is a lie. But what Olga presents here, and this is my experience, so that's why I'm putting it this way, are just natural mechanisms. You cannot hide from this. And the biggest danger in Olga's work on this path are the entities, because when we work here together, Olga can see on the second and third step, when we work together, Olga can see them and what they are doing, how the person is behaving. Right now I will just read the article from the beginning. So, in this series of articles, the author examines the science of the existence in the human body of a hidden parasite, whose existence globally affects all of humanity. For many, this version seems too fantastic to be true, but many facts are too eloquent. A small forward. Despite the fact that I have not completed several cycles of articles, I decided to start a new cycle. Since I consider the information with which you will become familiar further as very important. This work is the result of a series of letters which I received from one of my readers. At the moment, this material is rather crude. In many cases, it is rather a certain hypothesis than definitely reliable information. Since we do not yet have enough data, facts and experimental confirmation is all to dot all this. Since we do not have yet enough data, facts and experimental confirmations to dot all this. At the same time, the publication of some fragments in the form of comments and messages in different places gave a very positive result in the form of interesting and important additions. In many respects, that is why I decided to start publishing these materials without waiting for the end of this research. To use the opportunities of the collective mind of the community of people searching for and able to think outside of the box. As always, constructive comments, thoughts, remarks, memories, intuitive insights are welcome. In general, everything that can be at least somehow connected with this topic and help in revealing the truth is welcome. At the same time, as before, all the non-constructive chatter, especially with the transition to personalities, as well as statement on the topic or from the point of view you are all psychos, will be deleted without any warnings and clarifications. So, what is a Hydra? I don't know how to pronounce it honestly. In Russian we say Hydra. I would say Hydra. I don't know. I will say Hydra. Hydra. Yes, Hydra. So the lymphatic system that we will speak about, or the image of the lymphatic system of this parasite, that's what we call Hydra. For receiving the letters that served as the basis for this work, I found in different sources or received from different people information that people are infected with certain parasites that can affect the mind and in the body. But when trying to verify this information, I constantly got to the information that sometimes, very rarely, a person with weakened immunity can get infected with certain fungi, bacteria, or other microorganisms, from which he or she becomes very ill. You can find similar materials on the internet in large numbers. Only all this was not like some serious global problem, and the possibility of establishing mental control over a person with the help of these microorganisms was hardly possible. Disruption of the work of consciousness due to intoxication. Yes, this is possible, but not control of thoughts and behavior. And at this moment, I personally just would like to remind that we know cases where certain parasites, for example, control the behavior of rats, so they commit suicide, for example, eaten by a cat, so the parasite can move from one host to another. So this we know from the animal world. And I continue now. On the other hand, based on personal experience and information I gathered, I knew for sure that various telepathic influences on people are possible and quite normal, up to complete interception of control, when a person does something that he cannot remember later. Moreover, this man was not in a state of alcoholic or narcotic intoxication at the time of the interception of the administrator or the influencer. Also, some of them later said that they were tired and slightly absent-minded before this happened. The variation of such an impact is the situation when people see what is not, and even more often, on the contrary, when they do not see what actually is. Previously, all this was called the general term morok, from which the expression "fool around" occurs. But full interception of control with loss of memory is rare. But much more common is the transmission to people of other people's thoughts and desires, which they usually perceive as their own. In this case, all people are divided into several categories. Some people are not able to distinguish other people's thoughts and desires from their own. They are perfectly manageable people. These people are now usually put on key positions in the management system. Before that, they must undergo a so-called controllability test, when certain commands are given to them, and they must fulfill them, not realizing that they are being stealthily controlled. The second category of people who suddenly realize that they hear voices tell their relatives or acquaintances about this. That eventually leads them to a psychiatric hospital, where they are somehow cured or isolated from the society, so as not to disturb their stories of the rest. Not to disturb them. One more variant of the development of events in this case, when a person begins to be persuaded that he is the chosen one, some Messiah, the next prophet, the next incarnation of some great personality. And if a man turns and believes in his chosenness and exclusivity, he starts behaving accordingly, finally losing touch with reality. In this case, indeed, there are situations in which a person's perception of reality is violated so much that he cannot continue without qualified help from outside. But this is a separate topic. And finally, there is the third, not very numerous category of people who, realizing that something is not normal from the usual point of view, try to understand what is actually happening, while not losing touch with reality and keeping the ability to sober think and evaluate what is happening. Until recently, I personally believed that all such influences were secretly turned out by some more prepared people to others, either at the expense of natural opportunities inherent in the human body, or using some technical means, which many countries of the world, including the USSR, were involved in developing. But it turned But it turned out that this impact is realized in a completely different way, through a special creature, a parasite, which is embedded in the body of almost all people living today on Earth. At the moment, we decide to call this parasitic organism Hydra, by analogy with the way it is called in Hermetic texts and the old yet untranslated Orthodox traditions. It is this body, its properties and qualities, as well as the impact on the human body that we have already managed to find out, that will be discussed in this article. So a person is infected with a complex multicellular organism that parasitizes in the human body, and some of the manifestations are similar to the striking effect of intestinal bands. Because of that, it was called Hydra. It is massively present in the tissues of the brain and spinal cord, duplicating the nerve endings. So that is connected to the synapses. Also, the parasite is connected to the hormonal system and has the ability to stimulate it by supporting this or that state of consciousness. A set of experiences expressed in the form of persistent neural circuits. It completely swaddles our body, occupying all the intercellular space with this body, not crossing with the circulatory system. Mankind has long known about this creature. Let's start with the Bible. If you discard any other instructive subtext, then the description of original sin can be described in one single word: infection. Moreover, we read the original word as an adjective to sin, whereas it is more likely just a sin of the first kind. When the birds are iron, there will be the last generation. I believe it's a quote from the Bible. That is, Eve ate something that happened from something to which it is forbidden to touch on pain of expulsion from paradise. This something was infected. Eve contracted and infected Adam. This is the reason for the expulsion of Adam and Eve from paradise. The creature is the so-called beast, crafty, hard, the name of the serpent in Hebrew, which gave Eve the forbidden fruit, apparently infected by Hab's larvae. Hydra, the Greek tradition, the Christian tradition. According to the description of the legend, a new head appears in place of the felt head. In coelaterate stinging cells are in batteries, and immediately after working out one cell, another cell becomes in its place. A similar effect is seen in some cells of the parasites described. Yeah, you know all the stories of this beast. You cut one head off and two new heads will be grow out of this. And here we can see the first picture. On the side you can find this in the text. On the left and on the right there are two men attacking a beast in the middle with multiple heads. Most likely Satan. This is also one of his names. European medieval alchemists said that no mortal is able to see this being. But this is only because at that time the necessary microscopes were not available. And it was only available to people of sufficient purity from the parasite. Or it was possible to perceive only by people with sufficient purity from this parasite. And so, the mortal is able to see it. Video and camera captures, at least this is how the medieval alchemists imagined it. So the pictures at least tell us how they imagined it. Now we can see the second picture where someone is laying in the grave and there is a snake-like dragon or something like this. Directly after this, below this, we find the third picture. Between these two, the last one, lie 100 years. The pictures depict exactly what a Hydra is doing to a person. Describe exactly what a Hydra is doing to a person. The first engraving clearly shows that the person is asleep and he lies in a grave, and the serpent as if snuggled and drinks his breath. On the second engraving, the snake sucked to the heart area. This is, in both drawings, symbolically describes the absorption of the Hydra by the Hydra of life force from the human body. Hydra, enveloping the body, blocks the higher forms of mental activity and immunity up to 95%. Very interesting if we wonder about this number of why we are using only 5% of our brains. Stimulates an obsessive picture through the control of hormonal and nervous functions. Or control of the hormones and nervous functions. Thus, a person turns into a living dead, lies in a grave, like in a picture. Metabolism of the parasite is very fast. The parasite replaces its body completely in 2 to 3 weeks, a month, every month. Therefore, the parasite needs constant protein nutrition. The feeling of hunger that we experience is the result of its stimulation to induce a person to eat. That we experience is the result of this stimulation to induce a person to eat. So again, at this point, I personally want to point out these famous questions that people like to ask sometimes. I don't know how it's today, but like 10, 15 years ago, this question was very interesting. If the humans are not designed to be eaten, if breatharianism is possible, why do we have a mouth? Yes, the logical, at least I don't know the truth, but the logical answer is, yeah, because there is something that needs to be fed. And if this is not originally part of the body, then we can call it a parasite. So all forms of organic animal life on Earth are infected with it. I do not exclude that some forms are already a product of this selection. Even modern man is partly the fruit of this selection. According to the conclusion of modern genetics, 90% of our DNA does not bear useful information. That is, in the process of breeding for the purpose of degradation, this part was replaced by slack, informational debris. Many of those who read this text have already thought, what a nonsense! What can be a parasite in the body of every person if medicine has long studied the structure of a person along and across? But do not rush to conclusions. Do not forget that the very term medicine is written in Latin as medicina. That is, it contains the family name of the Medici family, which left an indelible mark on the history of Europe and probably of all mankind, including many times accused of connection with the devil, and on all the known emblems of Medici, we do not accidentally see the image of snakes wrapping a bowl and filling it with their poison. Now we can see the picture of these three emblems, yeah, of the Medici, where the two on the left are blue and one on the right. If we collect the basic information that we managed to collect on Hydra, we get, first of all, the body of the Hydra occupies the entire intercellular space, then swaddling the body from the outside, occupying the energy channels, the excretory system of the skin, the pores, and all the places where there is no clear blood flow, where there is no strong immunity. Secondly, throughout the body are located various internal organs of the Hydra. Third point, the main body weight of the Hydra is its center in the intestinal cavity. There are also larvae or heads of this. Official science believes that 90% of immunity is consumed in the process of digestion. The main conclusion in the human body, Hydra is represented by the human lymphatic system. and lymphocytes are the cells of the Hydra. In this case, lymphatic vessels are the circulatory system of the Hydra's body. The lymphatic system, does not intersect with the circulatory system of our body and does not have immunity other than the immunity of the Hydra itself. Immunity of the body itself. So the Hydra does not have its own immunity. Official medicine, or medicine claims that the lymphatic system is part of the human immune system, which is necessary for the removal of toxins from our body. Let's see, is it really so? Lymphocytes are referred to a common class of blood cells, which are called leukocytes. These are the white bodies in the blood. But this class includes a lot of different cells that are responsible for human immunity. Moreover, all these cells except lymphocytes have one feature. They are formed only in the bone marrow and are transferred only through the blood. But lymphocytes are produced not only in the bone marrow, but also by the lymphatic tissue itself. That is the body of the parasite. In this case, the actual human leukocytes that have absorbed some foreign bodies or microorganisms through the blood are excreted from the body without getting into any lymphatic canals or lymph nodes. That is, a person already has quite a functioning immune system and a system for removing toxins from organisms, from the body. The work of which is provided by the blood current again. Why? Then did we need another? So the author has a way of stating questions which are, what was the word? Yes, I'm not coming up with the word. So the author writes, why? Then, did we need another additional system that supposedly is responsible for removing toxins from the body? So, he wants to point out, if we already have one system that gets rid of toxins, what is the other one for? This is the first question. At this moment, I want to refer to another information that I have from another source, and that makes sense here, and for me it was a completely new discovery as well. Again, this is just a point to dig deeper, to research more. Our blood is throwing waste into the intestines, beginning right from the 12-finger intestines after the stomach. At different time during the day, different kind of proteins. Okay, and if we speak at this moment about breatharianism, life without food, these proteins which are thrown out from the blood in the intestines go to the colon, where they are dissolved to the very original building material, and then nourished by the or cultivated by the microflora, and then in the colon they are again sucked into the blood, where the blood again transfers this all the cells, all the nutrition to the cells that is necessary, and takes the damaged cell tissues from them, and then delivers it again in the evening or to different times of during the day to the 12-finger intestines and other parts of the intestines. Okay, so this is a cycle that is again natural. And the author wonders, if we already have one system for cleansing, why do we need another one? Maybe it has separate conclusions from the body, charge the bloody and purification systems of the body in critical situations. This could at least somehow explain the creation of additional output system. Let's see what they write about the lymphatic system in one of the sources. So these are just general sources that you can find if you open internet. A lymphatic system is a system that is not studied at any medicine institute at all. That's his quote. The lymphatic system, through its thin capillaries, permeates the whole structure of the body. Its main function are carrying lymph from tissues to the venous bed. Absorption from the intercellular space of colloidal solutions of protein substances that are not absorbed into the blood capillaries. Absorption of water and crystalloids dissolved in it, or dissolves in it. The formation of lymphocytes involved in immunological reactions and the neutralization of foreign particles, microbes and bacteria that enter the body. So that's the job, so to say. Here I want to draw your attention to the fact that such an important body system in medical schools is not studied. I hope that after reading this material you will understand why, but let us return to the description above and try to understand what is really wrong here. First, it is stated that the task of lymphatic vessels lie in the absorption of colloidal solutions of protein substances, which are allegedly not absorbed into the capillaries of blood vessels. Okay, some leftovers that are not getting absorbed in time. At the same time, the diameter of both is actually the same, and there is water is here and there. So for what reason these colloidal solutions should not be or are not absorbed into the capillaries of the circulatory system, but they are absorbed into the capillaries of the lymphatic system is not explained. They simply do not get absorbed, and that's it. But the most important thing is that the substance collected by the lymphatic system are not withdrawn outward, but back in the body, as the lymphatic vessels ultimately exit in the venous bed, and this means that further excretion of all these toxins and degradation products is still being handled by our kidneys and liver. Okay, this is, for example, one point that that I was, the last few days I was trying to understand this. I really don't understand where the lymphatic system and how it gets rid of whatever it is carrying. So I don't say that I found no answer, I just say that for me this is a mystery as for right now. The idea that I had until now, I have to admit, is simply that we are sweating it out, but actually, there are other possibilities. Logically, there are more possibilities, but I cannot say right now that I can give here any more information. Secondly, if we continue to analyze this, the lymphatic system has one important drawback. Unlike the circulatory system, which has its own pump, which is the heart, that creates a constant flow of blood, the lymphatic system of its own pump has no own pump. The lymph moves through the vessels due to the valves in them and their constant compression and expansion when the muscles contract. But the lymphatic system is part of the immune system that must remove the toxins and harmful substances from the body. Then this design has a very serious drawback, because when the body is sick, its mobility is minimal. Then it starts most of the energy, then it uses most of its energy for fighting the disease. It turns out that just at this moment the lymphatic system really does not work at its best. How so? How so? And what about the withdrawal of harmful substances from the body? The same colloidal solutions. How does the body remove them from the body during illnesses when its mobility is at its minimal? And why do not we die from intoxication? So if we are not so mobile, then we have to admits that this is not the most sufficient way of cleansing for our body. A very interesting article about the lymphatic system was recently published on the Carmola portal. So here the author refers to another article about the lymphatic system on the same website actually. And he says that when you read this for the first time, this article, it seems that you learn something new and important about how your body works. But this is only so long as you do not begin to analyze its content. So he read in this article, now he quotes this article. We treat the lymphatic system in the most obscene way, and with it we need only address to you. The lymphatic, or to us, to ourselves. The lymphatic system goes all the way from the bottom up and never in the reverse order. Those from the fingertips to the breast lymphatic duct. And how do we usually get a message? From the top to the down, against the course of the lymph, which means that the lymphatic flows are disturbed. Have you ever seen valves in the lymphatic ducts? This is a very important device. When the lymph rises, the valve passes it. But then it closes. It does not give the opportunity to return for the lymph. And if we properly massage ourselves as usually against the move, then all the valves will just be destroyed. Okay, and now attention please, question. How many people underwent a wrong massage? Judging by what the author of the article writes, it is quite large. In the case there were a destruction of the valves in the lymphatic network, which means that the lymph flow was disturbed. If this system, as we are told, serves to remove toxins from the body, then the consequences of its destruction should be very serious for the organism. If not death, then serious intoxication of tissues, which should cause a very painful condition after a similar massage. And now remember your feelings after the massage or socialize with those who passed the massage. How often after the massage did you have painful sensations, heaviness in the whole body, weakness? Based on my own experience, on his experience, I can say for sure, no time. On the contrary, we feel freshness, lightness, burst of energy. Why? Yes, because part of the structure of the parasite during the massage was destroyed. And its negative effect on the body was temporarily weakened. Another quote from the same article makes us think. Surprisingly, there were professional surgeons in our group, and 50% of them admitted that they never did embroider lymphatic vessels. It is unclear what the author of the article is so surprised about, because the fact that professional surgeons do not sew lymphatic vessels is actually quite natural. Okay, so after they cut in there, they don't sew it back. They do not really know anything about the lymphatic system, because when they studied at the medicine school, they did not say anything about it. Otherwise, they might have unnecessary questions and their merits. But the main reason why surgeons are not taught to sew lymph vessels is that it is absolutely not important for the recovery of the human body. Quite the contrary. Having a very intense metabolism, he quickly enough restores its structure. So they don't sew the lymphatic system because it simply recovers very soon. Then how to understand that in the placenta surrounding the fetus, in the mother's body, womb, there is no lymphatic system? What the most important function and such negligence, do placenta tissues not produce toxins like other, but the circulatory system in the placenta is there? And how does it happen that a type of congenital lymphatic system does not develop together with the circulatory system? it turns out that the fetus is poisoned by placenta toxins, or what? Or to put it like a question, does it turn out that the fetus is poisoned by a placenta toxin? Okay, let's leave these uncomfortable questions. Let's go to the very fetus. It turns out that the lymphatic system, for some reason, does not develop together with the circulatory system. It is late only on the 6th to 8th week in the form of an epithelial structure. The thymus and lymphocyte spreading occurs by 12th to 15th week, with the development of the lymphatic network and the creation of nodes. The thymus and lymphocyte spreading occurs by 12th to the 15th week, with the development of the lymphatic network and the creation of the nodes. Those 4 months toxins were not removed from the fetus. It is like a question. So it turns out that the first 4 months, the toxins from the first 4 months with the fetus were not removed from its body. Or does another blood circulate through the circulatory system for the fetus in the cells of the fetus, not the colloidal protein solution, and no colloidal protein solutions are formed? If you believe in the theory of the removal of toxins, then within a month the cells of the fetus must die from these toxins along with the fetus. And here we have several months. Ostensibly, the lymphatic system removes the remains of unsplit proteins. And it seems to me that she feeds on them, the Hydra. And the toxins produced by her from digestion splitting of proteins throw back into the venous blood, thereby not removing anything, but increasing the load on the blood purification system of the body. In one of the experiments set by the author of the initial materials, he observed how for a couple of minutes the Hydra completely enveloped a piece of meat, and together with it the clip of a microscope, a metal pin. It completely enveloped it. That is, getting into an uninfected organism, the Hydra begins to grow very quickly and takes up all the intercellular space with its body, creating a copy of our body from its own. It connects to synapses, which allow you to control the behavior of a person, connects to the hormonal system, which allows you to monitor the emotional state, and sprouts in this brain, blocking the normal operations of neurons. Until recently, official science claimed that the lymphatic system is absent in the brain, but recently they had to admit that the parasite tissues are still present there. Now let's take a look, or we can take a look at the picture. It's a picture from something under a microscope. A yellow circle with black corners. By the way, Aranka, you can find those pictures in the links that I sent in the beginning. If you scroll down a little bit, I believe it's the fourth picture. So this experience now with the microscope, this is another experience. This experience was posted by the author of the initial materials. This is a nutrient medium, what we see in this picture, a space, so a nutrient area, space. And what we see is simulina with the hungry Hydra cells taken from the author himself. 3 days full hunger, only on water. So the Hydra was very hungry. And approximately 15 to 20 minutes have passed since landing, landing, before being placed under the microscope. Now tell me, how can there be such a structures in the simulina as in the photo, in the form of a vascular system? In simulina can be a maximum of granules, which are visible, but there cannot be a vascular system in any way, under any scenario, under no scenario. This is the same lymphatic system, the circulatory system of the body, Hydra, which she instantly formed in a suitable nutritional medium. Yeah, I want to tell an example here that happened actually just a few days ago. But aside from this, when Olga does her aside from this, I see people coughing or spitting this out since I started to work with Olga. So here we can see it on a picture, but I see this in reality. And a few days ago, there was a strange situation. We had a lecture, and Olga was showing something. And by showing this something, she activated a process within her. And this process then was not finished. And during the night, this process finished itself. Olga felt that this parasite was, the Hydra was stuck in her chest. Olga didn't drink enough water, so that's the reason why this took so long. And during the night, in the night, she finally managed to get this out, and she spat it out on a piece of toilet, and it was on the corner of her bed. When I woke up and began to cleanse and to carry stuff from one place to another, I found this, and I never have seen it this big, and so I didn't understood right away what this is. And yeah, it's just like a jelly, and I was very wondered by this. It was like the fingertip, like a nail big, a little bit bigger as well, and it was just like real jelly-like. And yeah, when I asked Olga, what's this? Olga wondered, don't you know? It's a Hydra. The author of the experiments, like me, does not have answers to many questions. All of his equipment is a microscope. And remember, this was the youth of the Soviet times. Actually, he had to stop the research and experiments because of the pressure and extreme gravity of the experiments themselves, as on the physical plan on the body, the burden on all systems of the body with unclear consequences, and for the mind, working extremely hard alone to maintain the adequacy and perception and balanced perception and judgment. Nevertheless, a lot of information has already been collected that allows us to draw certain conclusions and build hypotheses about how this parasite is arranged and functioning. If we continue to rely on the analogy with the intestinal cavity, then they develop stem cells, which then migrate to different parts of the body, becoming an essential element, muscle tissues, stinging cells. It can be assumed that this also happens with our parasite. Happens with our parasite. Lymphocytes are stem migrating cells. Only the functionality of the body of the parasite is much more complicated. Here, for example, the statement of official medicine, which personally introduced me to entire stupor. Lymphocytes are of 3 types, produced in the bone marrow and ripen in the thymus, where they differentiate. Is it like this? They are made in one place and ripen in another. What kind of process is this? What does it mean to ripen? And what happens when they ripen there? What is necessary that they are ripen there? There is also differentiation. Wow! And no one has any additional questions, but there is no other such process in the body. That is, it is very similar to the fact that lymphocytes are Hydra stem cells, which are quite mobile and have the ability to feed themselves during the process. In addition, it is believed that the cycle of migration of lymphocytes in the human body is 6 hours. This corresponds to the feeding cycle, since by 4 to 6 hours we have a feeling of hunger. Apparently they attack food first, and that's the process of supposedly immune activity, which we record in the intestines during the digestion of food. Primarily a process of digestion of Hydra, and with no real human immunity connection or very poor connection. I messed it up a little bit, but the point here is simply that Hydra eats up first the food, then the immune system. So here's what the author of this study writes about this. Of this study here is writing. The creature is eating everything that can be eaten. She cannot stop. The more you feed the Hydra, the more she will demand. The feeling of hunger is her hunger, not ours. It is true that it can be brought up. It is she who needs 3 meals a day, because she has a very fast metabolism and an incredible amount of cells produced. Otherwise, her habits are reflected in our behavior patterns. The first of which is a habit of eating regularly. It feeds not only on what we eat. She loves our hormones, especially serotonin, dopamine, adrenaline, and so on. Due to the connection to the nervous system, the Hydra can stimulate the allocation of certain hormones to influence human behavior, gradually forming the corresponding habits of behavior. For example, as in the case of dopamine production when filling the stomach, and not with anything but suitable for it in sufficient quantity of products. For example, if you eat a green salad in amount of about equal to a piece of meat with pasta, then in the case of a salad, a pleasant feeling of satisfaction does not come. And in the case of meat with pasta, it does. That is, the release of dopamine occurs only in the case of meat with pasta. If you continue to persist with salad, then instead of a rough buzz from satisfaction, you can notice a slightly audible, very light sensation of strain, which progressively intensifies and can reach a completely sensible bodily euphoria. For people who drink alcohol, this experience is unavailable. It is subtle, it is very subtle, but it is a reference for understanding the process of Hydra's retreat. It is a feeling of working immunity, alleviating the state of the body. Distantly, this sensation can be compared to sensations during the tightening of the denticles of the back. Such a feeling appears after yoga, tai chi, each one, all from personal experience, compared to the sensations of other people, and in the case of each one it is indicated and explained by the master. It also looks like a feeling of sweetness from a long prayer. True, the Holy Father says that it is not for the sake of his sweetness that one should pray, but this also has a physiological explanation. Hydra parasitites on most of our habitual mental processes, which determine the patterns of behaviors that are the essence of sin. Sin is a habit, was said by one of the Buddhas. Sort of like the author believes it was said, he's not sure. Our so-called internal dialogue consists of thoughts, that are generated in the head and produced by these patterns, repeated in a circle, in the form of obsessive constructions. Prayer completely cleans and replaces this dialogue, and with a proper prayer for sufficient time, some patterns are deactivated or die. Thus the Hydra retreats, as in the case of hunger. That is, here the impact is thought that the disconnection of the control circuits of consciousness. That is, in fact, the Hydra is not a primitive being. Like most ordinary parasites, it is a very large organism occupying up to 90% of the intercellular space in the human body and consisting of a huge number of cells that demonstrate very complex behavior even when they are autonomous. Moreover, these cells do not simply unite within our body into a single structure. They actually form parallel independent structures for the exchange of matter, energy and information that are beyond our consciousness and feelings, since it is the tentacles of the Hydra that are connected to the synapses of our nervous system, and not vice versa, not in the opposite way. Therefore, Hydra can hear our feelings and thoughts, but we do not. But the most important thing is that there are facts that say that parasites in human bodies are not really autonomous. They are united into one network. They are such a super organism in a large swarm, like bees or ants. In this case, these organisms themselves must have a certain level of consciousness and reason. Otherwise, they would not be able to control such a complex, intelligent being as a person. Unlike the author of the study, who believes that each individual parasite is very reasonable, I personally believe that the Hydra itself cannot have a powerful mind, because it does not have appropriate structures for this, which must be commensurable in complexity and volume with the human brain. But it is likely that the Hydra, having gained control over the human body, can start using his brain for his own purpose. Most likely this fact explains the so-called split personality, as well as cases of so-called obsession, when a person's body is captured by some other entity and the person's own soul loses control over his body. But many sources also indicate that in addition to simple entities that are parasites in the bodies of humans and animals, there are certain super essence in this system. Similar to the queen bee's hive or anthill, in this super essence already have a very powerful mind, which is more powerful than the mind of a single person. Apparently this very essence should be called Satan or devil. That is, this is the very essence of that opposes our God, who created the earth and all living things on it, including people. The actual primary act of creation itself did not have to happen exactly in the solar system. I believe that the solar system and the earth are secondary, a world created in the likeness of the primary, as well as many other worlds in the universe. When we once communicated with representatives of the previous civilizations, they told us that before souls were born in a new body, without losing the memory of previous lives, which made a person actually mortal, the change of body for the soul was something like a change of old worn-out costume for a new one for us now. And here is what the author of the materials, of the original materials, writes about it. It is noteworthy that in modern religions, reincarnation is presented as something not entirely good, denied by Judaism and Christianity, and in Buddhism is the central work for liberation from it. what is remarkable, the higher forms of Buddhism doing, and there are three types of this, are accompanied by a decrease in body size from 30 to 70% at the same time of death, if I am not mistaken. A small intervention from my side here. I cannot go very deep right now, but here right now he is speaking about the body of light, different types of realization which are recorded, which are studied, and this is also a very big field that is free available on the internet. Part of the body, so shrinking the body size from 30 to 70% at the time of death, if I'm not mistaken. Part of the body flies somewhere, or flies off to somewhere. In my experiments, I noticed the phenomenal ability of some parasite cells to move, and I would call it teleportation. That is, the parasite can teleport. In conjunction with the proclaimed necessity of stopping reincarnation, I come to the conclusion that this is a fully matured body of the parasite, an adult specimen that goes somewhere, proceeding from us shared views on the device of the universe and its divine essence. Reincarnation in a world arranged accordingly to divine rules is a joy for which there is much, if not all, and not a series of suffering and samsara, from which it is necessary to free ourselves and interrupt the divine chain of rebirth, thus interrupting the very evolution of the divine. Conclusion: today's Buddhism is as poisoned as today's Christianity. Okay, I don't know if you understand the picture that he is opening here, so I will shortly, in one or two sentences, tell it once again. We reincarnate in the, we live, so to say, when we die, we simply continue to live some other life. Our consciousness simply shifts to another. And this will continue, this kind of reincarnation will continue itself until we manage to, break free from this, so to say. Okay, this was quite easy, nothing special about this bigger picture, but I believe it is the hint is understood. Today our planet is its patrimony. Our bodies are a source of energy and food for an aging larva. Normally, a giant amount of energy is removed from a person for life, while the human body can withstand such a load for about 70 years, and only recently, thanks to the effort of medicine, which has already to compensate for the destruction of the human body by a parasite, which has made it possible to raise the life expectancy. When a person dies, the Hydra inside of the one dies as well. It is she who begins to decay first, but ideally, if it ripens, eating the body and replacing it, then when it reaches maturity, it is teleported somewhere else. Hence, there are three types of today Buddhist realization, with the body decreasing up to 30% of its size during teleportation, and the restarted essence of human existence, the termination of the cycle of reincarnation. From the point of view of the larva, it is necessary not to worry, accept the world as it is. However, according to the model of the universe we share, the cycles of reincarnations are part of the divine design, if not its essence, which is necessary for the realization of the idea itself. On the other hand, Christianity, rejecting reincarnation, still preaches struggle and liberation from the evil one, Hydra. My belief is based on the study of hermetic sources, personal observations and experiments on oneself. For the first time, I noticed the manifestations of the parasite of almost 30 years ago, and today I have also instrumental confirmation. Of course, I admit the possibility of error and false interpretation. Also, the results of some experiments are staggering. Today I rested on a whole series of technical, social, and legal problems that do not allow me to continue. Those few materials that I have, I'll gradually send them out. The parasite is the main source of the disease in humans. In his body, separated from the circulatory system, there is no immunity other than his own and very weak one. In his body, many microorganisms and fungi proliferate and developing large colonies that poison the body with products of their vital activity and dead bodies by their vital activity with products, yes. It is at this stage that there are swollen protective reactions of the body to a part of the body with such a colony that separates this place to different types of connective tissue. Cancerous in particular. Cancer is not a disease, but a healthy reaction to the disease. And the disease is a parasite, not fungi that live in it. Again, being a consequence. So, take the encephalitis, for example. The irritation gets to the person in the blood, and the first stage of the disease begins, which has signs of a common acute respiratory disease or flu. With this, the organism can easily cope for several days. Then, for a period of up to a month, there seems to be nothing but the disease progresses and affects synapses and other nerve endings. The second stage of the disease begins, which in 50% or more leads to paralysis. When 50% or more leads to paralysis, or to serious disorders of the psyche. What is characteristic at this stage? Doctors cannot do anything, just make a helpless gesture. That is, at first the stimulus is defeated by the body, but at the same time, then somewhere in the body it continues to develop and still affects the synapses. How's that? This is where he multiplies, where he cannot get immunity, which he had already strangled when he was in the blood. Doctors raise their hands, they don't know. The Hydra hypothesis perfectly explains the phenomenon. The body of the Hydra does not intersect with the circulatory system. Otherwise, immunity would have... Otherwise, immunity would have already strangled it. And in the body of the Hydra, apart from its own and weak immunity, there is no other immunity. And this weak immunity does not cope with the irritation of encephalitis, which eventually begins to destroy her own body. In the case of encephalitis, it is a place of connection to the synapses in the brain. When the Hydra body is destroyed in these places, the access of human immunity to the irritant of the encephalitis is opened. The struggle of immunity begins with the consequence of the destruction of the Hydra's body and the massive death of the conjugated nerve cells of the man. But when immunity copes with the consequences, the tissue of the human body itself are already irretrievably destroyed, and a person becomes a hopeless invalid. Analogy can be traced with some other infectious diseases. We tell the stimulus enters the body and the incubation period begins. This is where it happening in this. This is where it is. I'm sorry. This is where is it happening this period? Where is it happening during this period? In the blood, in the tissues? Nothing like this. Where there is blood flow and there is immunity, there the infection is strangled for 2 times. But calmly and freely it multiplies just in the topologically isolated body of the Hydra, until it reached the critical mass that leads to the beginning of mass death of the Hydra tissues. As a result, all these toxins and decomposition products are in the blood, and a toxic and bacteriological shock occurs, with which neither the immunity nor the drainage capacity of the human body can sometimes be overcome. So long sentences, to put it shortly, a disease occurs, but the body can perfectly deal with this problem. So this disease grows within the Hydra, and as it is big enough, it destroys the Hydra, becomes free, and now the body is not able to deal with it. Also worth recalling is the medieval picture of the plaque. Black ulcers of lymph nodes. And again, from infection to the acute phase, there is a phase of incubation. And where exactly is it incubated? Why does not the whole subsequent horror at the moment of infection actually take place? Because the immunity perfectly copes with the virus in the blood. Because everything is incubated in the body of the Hydra, and at its peak with this number of viruses and their toxins, with the toxins of the decomposing Hydra body, the organism cannot cope with these virus-killing cells. Another quote from the author of the original study. I repeat, the mechanism of immunity studied by us is mostly a mechanism for feeding and protecting the Hydra. Quite possible most Earth microorganisms do not cause any harm to the human body, and the reaction of immunity to these organisms is unknown to us. However, the Hydra, as a lower creature, does not have such protection and is strongly ill from the majority of microorganisms, which it mercilessly attack and parasitize on the body, in its body. I had the idea that viral epidemics are a way of transmitting information between Hydra individuals, a kind of DNA flashing, vaccination. Just as a vaccination are ways to protect the Hydra, based on my conclusion that most of the immune processes we studied is the immune process of the Hydra. In this way, we help the Hydra survive in our body. Whether all viruses are a way of communicating Hydra, or some of the directed against it, I do not know this. But I admit this possibility. Yes, here's just another note, postscriptum, so to say. We discussed the option that some of the viral epidemics could be attempts by the previous civilization to defeat the parasite using special designed viruses. The whole historical process and our whole life, the invisible front, the struggle between the Ra, us, and us as its collective incarnation, and the Hydra, the collective embodiment of the forces behind it, perhaps civilizations anti-Ra. I do not know what to call them and do not want to call them some way. Therefore, everything that happens on the planet is the actions of either one or the other forces. Thus, the massive nuclear orbital bombardment of the Earth, which took place according to some alternative, was most likely a sanitary cleanup of the Earth after the departure of all those not infected. However, some of the people survived and the experiment began, of which we are now part. To be continued. It is not connected with the Kundalini serpent. It is impossible to kill the Hydra. For all of you, can you say, is this information new to you? Have you ever heard of something like this? What is the way to make the peace with the Hydra? This topic is not picked occasionally. Very few people know what we are speaking about. And if you remember all the previous dialogues, open talks, you can find that we, so to say, have been moving around this one topic. Olga encountered this more than 20 years ago for the first time when she began to conclude practices on breathing with people. Because Olga's teaching touched the very deep, the deepest layers of the human essence, so they actually confronted this. Olga didn't call it Hydra. But Olga understood right away that this is another entity that is present within our body. Olga was working with the European part of or European culture, so to say. She wasn't working with the Asians at this time. And Olga discovered that Hydra that this entity, it has its own nest, so to say, a place where it lives, its hideout. Nest, the hideout, with those people, it was in between the shoulder blades, where most people have pains. There's a certain point where pain appears in the first place, so to say, most of the time. And when people begin to breathe, they rise their level of energy, and the entity begins to lose control over the people because they simply do not resonate anymore together. Olga was doing a special massage, pressing on the space between the shoulder blades. And very big pieces of slime, very stinky, began to come out from the people. Olga found that this slime, or this entity, it has tentacles, so to say, which connect along the spine, connect to the nerves. In the beginning, when Olga begins to work there, the one perceives it as personal pain. But when Olga tears these pieces away, the more pieces Olga tears apart from this entity, the less the one identifies him or herself with this pain and understands it's not his pain actually. When Olga is doing this kind of massage and the one begins to experience pain and understands that this is not his or her own pain, at the same time the one experiences pleasure. Very often this entity begins to speak, and it can say things which the one him or herself doesn't even know. When Olga tears those parts away which are blocking the nervous system, under the skin a small ball appears like a bump, and this bump begins to move throughout the body. It's a ball like a ping-pong sized ball, and this thing moves through the body as if there is no density of the body. So Olga says it's not completely physical. So what's the main thing that is happening with the human? His reaction and perception paradigm of the world changed a lot. And in the first place, the perception of the inner world, whatever goes inside the body, becomes more clear, like the perception of a universe. Very deep inner freedom appears. The state of centration then becomes natural by itself, without additional effort. And if we go even further, Olga, because of her experience and her energy, she materializes it, so to say. But when the one is strong enough by him or herself and is able to work with the entity by himself or herself, then the one is able to continue the work by oneself. And then a very interesting phenomenon appears. The one begins to carve out pieces of this entity. It is possible that the one carves it out from the hand, from the feet, from the rib, wherever, what usually is not understandable. And after each such argument, so to say, or deal or cleansing, the one perceives or feels him or herself more free, more clean, more complete. So the first question was, is it possible to kill the Hydra? Then there was a question, how can we befriend ourselves with the Hydra? Both of them are impossible. We can reduce the influence of the Hydra on us. Imagine you live in a community and your neighbor is an alcoholic and he always disturbs you, tries to force you to work for him or something like this, eats up your food. At a certain moment you find the solution for the problem with your neighbor. Somehow you manage to deal with him and he becomes quiet and don't interfere in your life. Arnold Ehret was describing an interesting fact in his book Merciless Diet. When a person is long enough on raw food, some white powder-like substance begins to appear on his skin, so coming out of the skin. The leukocytes die, the body of the Hydra becomes less influential. The color of the human body may even change and become more like golden-like. From this position of view, it also explains why raw food gives not only a better sensation of the physical body, but also of the psychological state. People who are doing these kinds of diets seriously, they describe such phenomena, such situations when they have drawbacks, when they begin to eat everything and they lose control over themselves. So in these cases, the Hydra takes control over the consciousness or the behavior of the human and forces him to do whatever it wants to do. But after you disconnect it from the nervous system, such drawbacks do not occur. It is out of the reach of this entity. That's why correct practices of breathing help very strongly to disconnect from the Hydra. And right now Olga received a very big present from her destiny. She never received such a big present. We are finishing right now the second step of Pranic Breathing, and people are going deeper into these processes and encounter the Hydra. And yesterday Olga was doing a lot of work in this field.
Yesterday Olga made the massage with my shoulder. It was, I felt like something wants to come out and I want to let it out. And I just let go and try to make the tension. And it was connected with emotions also. And yes, and then we walked to the sea and I continued working alone to follow my body, the movement which my body does. To let the body go, to just let everything come out, and it's definitely connected with emotions in my case. I had situations from my life which were not good, which were painful, coming out. And then I continued working with my body and the entity. And the emotions came out and disappeared. So I could let go. So it was connected.
Olga has been working with Valery yesterday. It was very interesting to observe how it was blocking Valery's consciousness when it felt a serious danger. The Hydra simply tensed all of his will, all of his energy. So Valery said, I understand everything, I'm ready, but I still cannot do it. And when Christina disconnected in a great amount for the first time from the Hydra, a very special sensation of the universe within yourself, oneself, appeared. If possible, Valery, to comment this experience, to share here with us. Yes, he will speak Russian, I will translate to English. So like Olga said, they have been in the water. He won't call it panic or fear, but he was, so to say, instinct driven. He understood everything but couldn't do anything, and it was, he even laughed about it himself at that time because he understood it, but it was not possible to do it. So then Olga found a solution. Through breathing, they found an access to the area in the chest where it was blocked. Yesterday they went through the chest, through the neck, through the head, and he perceived that a lot has changed since yesterday. His feeling of his body changed. In details, he cannot even describe this. There are so many. There is no pain in the neck, no tension in the head. In general, tension went away, and his voice changed as well, and the sensation in the muscles, in the bones, the whole body. And so he perceives this change throughout the body today, quite not understanding everything, but it has to go on, it has to go further. Thank you, Valeria. Yeah. So the more practice Olga had, and with time also people from other cultures came, for example from the Asian culture. When Olga works with people from Asia and she presses on this back, she understands that there is emptiness, there is no nest. So Olga began to search throughout the body, and she found it, the hideout, in the area of the hips. So Olga made the conclusion for herself. For the European people, the area is more between the shoulder blades, and for the Asian, genetics, it is more in the area of the hips. But if it will be disconnected, the process further is just the same. And Olga observed further that the Europeans, they have this habit of starting doing something very heated with lots of energy, but very soon to give up. But the Eastern people, they are exactly the opposite. So they think a lot in advance, show they do this or not. But if they once have started, they do this completely. So those are just Olga's observations. And what Christina and Valerie have been describing right now, basically that is the beginning. And when they limit the influence by the Hydra maximally, then the level of energy will rise a lot. Then we will find out that this neighbor is not the only one around us, and we will encounter other entities in our body. And just like these pieces of this Hydra shows itself in a physical form, the other entities have also their physical expressions. But logically, we can say that the energy becomes so dense that it becomes visible. So after the Hydra, this Hydra, there will be at least 7 very important big entities. So don't think that we are the only ones in this body and we decide everything for us. Mastered centration, so the practice of centration, is key in this process. And then you begin to see how this influences you, and you can deal with it. This topic is very big, and Olga can speak about it for days. People who have no experience with it, they of course don't understand the process. It is not a linear process, not something that goes always straight in the same way. But this information, to be aware of this information, is a must if you go on this path. When you begin to control the Hydra instead of being controlled, you will receive a huge load of energy. If we open the question to get rid of this completely through the help of Olga, Olga has definitely to say not everything depends only on her. Olga can definitely, through her power and knowledge, violate this process, so to say. But this is on the level of abortion, because this is intervention in the process when the one is not dealing with this process, not ready for this process. Keep in mind that the Hydra is also regenerating. So this is one moment. The other moment is, imagine you run on the street and find someone who is totally not prepared, not in energetical term, not in the psychological, not in the physical term, and begin to put his bones in their right place. So if you raise your energy, of course, you will simply not be continue resonating with the Hydra, and she simply will not be able to be nourished by you. But if your energy lowers again, then of course this repeats. But then again, situations happens when people have practiced enough, and it is enough for Olga to simply touch their right area, and this whole thing begins. Olga remembers a funny case with Christina, actually, when she was betrayed by the entity, or the entity tried to control her mind. Maybe Christina can tell this again.
It was just I could just make a difference between my own thoughts or thoughts which are manipulative. And when Olga made the massage and worked with the entity, then I just had the idea I could now just pretend as if I come out. I could spit something out, cough something out, and just pretend like I'm working, and at the end no one would notice, and I would just not feel the pain anymore, which was which was on my back. So this thought was definitely not mine, because I wanted to get rid of this influence. So that was funny at the moment.
Okay, thank you. And now, when Olga meets the people here, and she finds herself like in Syria, where she waits for the next episode. When this process begins, it can become very soon, very fast. Many different results can appear during the day because of many different experiences. That's why when people come now, they can tell what happened yesterday with them, and they tell something new every day, and those are real steps. And here Olga would like to come back to the first step of pranic breathing. All the information that we are going through here is in some way touched there. That's why when you go through this information again, or when you simply remember this, you understand because you have now new experience. You are now on a different level, but you understand that the same thing is going on, and you simply perceive more clear the actual process that lies behind it. So until this knowledge is not experienced by yourself, are not showing themselves within you, you will not be able to perceive this completely, of course. And people are wondering, why will we have results? Why will certain things happen? They will happen when the time is right, when the one leaves the stage of the wood that he is maybe in. So this means very dry, very not flexible, inflexible. It is also very interesting to understand that at this moment, in order to slow down the process, food is actually a good tool. This is also another level of experience of this process, because we can understand how food is connected with our psychosomatics, because this is all a big system. And in this case, food is indeed a tool that helps us to reach our goal, to regulate the processes. It happens also that people tell Olga, you are speaking about Breatharianism, but your pupils are drinking juices, are using herbs, because those are not only processes of Breatharianism. And people who have no idea of what Olga is actually doing, it is very complicated to explain to them, simply to explain what is going on.
Yes, I didn't know exactly for what I came here, but the insight was very strong and strong enough to make it come. Olga's teaching, well, she uses words that I'm not really used to, but in the how to say it, but it's only the form, and I'm going on to feel that in the ground I resonate very deeply with what is happening here. For me, for the group, it's a global process. And I would like to share about Olga's massage she did me a few days ago, because it was so unexpected. She began with some strong pressure on my belly, different organs, places on the back. So at one moment, Olga touched my hips, the hips area, and I began to laugh. I don't know the word in English, but I couldn't help laughing, and it was the first moments where I didn't want this. It was too strong, but finally some huge joy came, and I laughed from the situation. And yes, joy is the best word I can say for what I felt and what went on days after. Well, it's still resonating. Something moved, something came out. I don't know how to say it, but something really deep happened. Yes, that's what I wanted to share.
And I just want to recall that this had an effect also on your diet for the next days. I don't want to go into details what changed exactly, but let's say it then became more unusual as the rhythm, or you said it was rather unusual how your diet changed for the next days.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Olga wants to state her own example. When Olga came here to Dominican Republic, she understood that she's going to to work also on herself, and she decided to go on with only coconut water. But very soon Olga was simply tired of it. So Olga retreated from this and simply began to drink water. A few days ago, when these processes became active within the people present on the seminar, Olga had to become activated as well to show this. Olga showed one motion that helped to move the Hydra, so to say, a little bit, and it was also aimed at centration. Valery, for example, tried to make this motion just like Olga showed it, and then attention right away appeared in his navel. But when Olga was showing this, she actually moved the entity and directed it to the exit, and she understood that she is not able to get this out. Olga had not enough water inside of her. The space where Olga tore off this piece was quite dry, and there was not enough liquid in order to materialize the etherical layer, so to make it more dense. Olga began to cough very strongly, understood that this piece was stuck. When the people left, Olga drank a lot of liquids, and then she lay down and went to sleep. During the night, when the body accumulated enough water, this piece simply was coughed out or flew out. Olga spit it out on a piece of toilet paper and put it aside. Then I woke up in the first place and found this, wondered what this may be, didn't understood right away what it was. Because it was quite big actually, and very more solid than what I have seen until so far. It's like there is a leg, a big leg from this Hydra, a bone of this Hydra is laying there. That's also the reason why Olga makes such a big focus on burning and leaching out. One more time she proved for herself that her methods are very physiologically and yes, very logically, energologically, physiologically and psychologically.